little heads up on my Jinny Beyer block of the month, the first month. I bought my kit, and I prefer to do this because then you know you're going to get the spectacular image, just like Jinny Beyer planned. And real quick, I'll just show you. I bought the teal kit, and this is this year's. I call it block of the month, but she's calling it technique of the month, because that's the important thing. You're actually learning while you're creating this magnificent quilt. And it comes in this teal that I chose, and it comes in frost, autumn, desert, plum, and also holiday. So if you find the one you want, the one you like best, it comes in 6 colorways. Pretty phenomenal. And just so you know, if you look, these stars are a little bit different. They're all unique, and that's special. And since you do it one section a month, or one part of a section a month, it's very doable. She breaks it down in bite-sized pieces, which certainly make it easier. So I stopped by her shop, but you can go online to www.jinnybeyer.com, and I bought the kit, which I found was wonderful. I love, love, love the colors in this. So here is the kit. And see these miniature stripes? They're going to come in real handy, because you've got her border print here, but these are miniature stripes which really are going to give the stars some pop. So here are my beautiful colors. I will set them back over here. The 2 colors that we used in this colorway, remember each colorway has its own specifics, but for my teal colorway, these are the 2 colors I used in the first month. And this has stripes. Isn't that interesting? So these 2 blues. Okay. Now, when you join Jinny Beyer's newsletter, and here, just so you'll know, let me get this in nice and focused. There's the information. If you go to her website, you can sign up for free for her monthly newsletter. And the monthly newsletter is how you get your patterns for the entire quilt for free. While you're there, you can look for the kit and different supplies. I take a folder every year when it first begins, because I've done this several years. And in the folder, I keep all the information about this quilt. And the quilt's name is Stellaris. So, here is the first month's information. But just to show you, when you sign up for her newsletter and get the link to the quilt, you can print off all the information. Here is a chart of each of the fabrics and what fabric number they are, so that when you're doing that particular month's requirement, you'll know exactly what fabric you're dealing with. Then here are general instructions. They just give you the basic information, what tools you'll need, what techniques you'll need. And so I keep all of this information in a folder so I don't lose it. That way, when I have time to sew, it's right there. So now, here is my information sheet. Now, I'm doing this as a request of my online group. But please know that when you sign up for Jinny Beyer's newsletter and you get the free instructions for this quilt, Jinny also makes videos of each session. So anything you want to know along the way, Jinny answers for you ahead of time. You can see what you're supposed to do before you actually have to cut the fabric and work with it. So, all right. So I also ordered the templates. This is a template quilt, and you'll do different techniques, like you can do some strip piecing and you can do some foundation piecing or paper piecing. But I wanted the templates because there were quite a few of them. So you can buy the template material, run it through a laser printer, which I don't have, or you can buy these already printed for you. So you just have to cut them out. Couldn't get much easier than that. So for this sheet had information specific to these templates. So you can see I almost cut them out, but not quite. This one I'll go ahead and finish cutting out because I want to show you something about it. So I'm very careful to cut, leaving the lines, and be very careful then when you trace and cut. If you use these and cut with a rotary cutter, please be very careful. I think if I were to do that, I might mount them on cardboard first, because you don't want to cut your finger and you don't want to constantly cut on the template material and waste it away. And here are all my templates. I cut them out the first month. Anything that I wasn't sure of, I left it attached. I put the any written instructions in with the ones I've already cut out. Now I have one of these. This is a Fisker's, and it's a hole punch, and it's for 1/16 inch, a 1/16 of an inch hole. And you can get these also from Jinny Beyer for a very reasonable price. And what you do is you place this, you place the template, you place the hole punch, pardon me, place the hole punch right over the hole, where the hole is supposed to be, and then you squeeze down and make the hole. And as you can see, I've got all of the holes. And this helps you mark your template when you're laying it on your fabric. I'll show you very carefully. I'm going to do this with an ink pen because I want it to show up for you. Pretend this is your fabric that you're working on. You lay the template on the fabric and put whatever marking pencil that you want in the hole. And then you can see you've got it marked. You know exactly where to stop and start right there. All right. So that's why you make the holes in these. And this is nice because you don't want a 1/4 inch hole. You don't want something too big. So put that over there. Now, I have already cut out my pieces because I've already been working on them. I need 10 more of these. This is going to be for the center of the star. Those little, so they're going to be little rays, little diamond shapes that go around the center of the star. There are 2 different ways you can do this that I'm going to show you. One way is the quickest way, and one way saves fabric. This is the quick way. And she gives you instructions. She gives you instructions on how wide to cut these 2 strips of fabric. Now I haven't cut them out the size she said because this is just to show you. I did not do it this way because I treasure my Jinny Beyer fabric and I did not want to waste anything. But if you want to do it the quick way, you use template in. See that template in. And what you would do is make 2 strips the size that she says. And let me see. One strip would be 2 1/4 by 18. The other strip would be 1 1/2 by 18. So fabric 4, which I'm going to say is the dark. And then fabric 3, I'm just going to say for this purpose. Now, I'm going to show you another tool that Jinny taught me to use, which I dearly love. And that is tailor's chalk. I love it. And you can always keep an emery board or a piece of sandpaper, or they even have little trimmers to keep the edges sharp for about $5. But I love tailor's chalk, and the reason I love it is you can pull it across the fabric and it doesn't draw up the fabric. When you try to use a lot of other marking devices, it tends to really grab and stretch the fabric. Now, I do have other colors of chalk. It comes in red, blue, and yellow also, but I can see the white line. You might not be able to see it as good as I can. But then what you would do is you would cut out just along the inside stripe of that tailor's chalk, because that's exactly where, just the inside of that mark of tailor's chalk. And as you can see, this makes quick work of making 42 of these diamonds, these two-piece diamonds. Now, after I would do this, then I would then trim back at an angle, the back part of this, to prevent any bunny ears from showing on the other side. But the problem with this is you can't start the next one until right here. So you have a lot of wasted fabric. And I did it the individual way because when I cut out, pretend this is just one strip of fabric that I cut. When I cut this out or drew around it, then I could come and turn this way and draw around it again. So I saved half the fabric that the quick and easy way would use up. And I prefer to save my scraps of Jinny Beyer for wonderful projects. It is such an intense, vivid color range, and it always adds so much to whatever I'm sewing. So then, if you do it the saving fabric method, then you're pretty much committed to sewing these by hand because it just makes it so much easier. What I will do when I'm all done is take this template in and just double check that my work ended up the right size. Okay? So I just wanted to show you that. And then I'm going to put my tailor's chalk away. I'd like to make sure to use it with clean hands so that it stays as soft and pliable and sharp as I like. And this fabric has what looks like flowing lines or flame lines. So the nice thing about being able to cut it out individually, I want my flame lines I want that movement to show. So I have my stripes going horizontally and I have these going up and down. But you can do it whichever way you want. In fact, she will tell you, and the template will say, it will show you whether it's lengthwise, just as long as you use the straight of grain lengthwise or the straight of grain top to bottom. But just make sure it's on the straight of grain. Bias sides are very tricky to use. I'm going to use a nice neutral gray thread, and I'll show you really quickly how I tie a knot. I lay the thread on my finger, then lay the needle across it, and then wrap the thread several times around my needle, and then I hold it tight with this hand. Then I pull it slowly and let that knot slide down the fabric to the bottom, as far down as I can get it. Alright, so now I'm going to zoom in to show you how I do the hand stitching. So I take this piece with the dots put on this one, and I take this with the markings on this one, and I line the dots up and match them. Line them up and match them good. And now I have my thread knotted, and it's a nice neutral thread. All right, so I find where the dot is. I come in through the dot, and I prefer to make just one stitch and go back over and loop that stitch. Okay. Then I start out making tiny stitches. I pull up and this is a very small needle, you notice? Jinny Beyer taught me if you want small stitches, it's good to have a small needle. So now when I start back in, I'm going to start behind the last stitch that I did. And that way I've made it a locking stitch again. All right, so I come in here and now I put 3 or 4 more stitches on. And you notice the needle stays relatively still. It's my other hand that moves the fabric back and forth, feeding it onto the needle. All right, so then I start behind, take 3 or 4 more stitches, keeping the fabrics even. If you're worried about keeping your fabrics even, then put a little pin to hold them together. One pin along here would do just fine. And just put your needle, use this hand to load that needle with little stitches, and then pull it up and pull it just taut but not tight. You want this to lie as smooth as you can. If it's gathered, your stitches are too tight. So now I'm coming to the end. I'll show you how I finish up. So I take 2 more stitches and then I'm finished. I pull the needle up and go through the loop. Go through this loop left and pull it tight. And then one more time, do the same thing. Pull it through the loop. And then I make a loop, run my needle through it, hold it, pull the knot down to the fabric. Trim. Make a habit of making a knot on your thread in the needle so that you're ready for the next time. Because if I don't do this, I tend to forget and then go to take my first stitch and it just pulls all the way through the fabric. So here's the first one I just did. And another thing I wanted to tell you is before I use these fabrics, before I cut them out, I sprayed them with a little touch of starch. I like doing that now because I find I get a lot more accurate cutting and sewing. And don't forget, you come in behind here, cut these at an angle, and that way you won't have any bunny ears. So I'll put this on the pile. So I've got my fabric marked. Then I'm going to come here, place this here. I'm going to come in at my first dot and take a little bite of fabric, pull it up, and then go back and do the same exact thing in the same exact place. That gives me a locking stitch. Then I load about 4 stitches on, pull the thread up. You want it taut but not tight. You don't want to start making ruffles in your fabric, then you're pulling too tight. So I take the needle and I keep the needle relatively still, and I use the hand holding the fabric to feed it onto the needle. 3 to 4 stitches works for me. Okay, then you go back, make that locking stitch, load on 3 or 4 stitches, and it really doesn't take long at all. I like doing this in the evening when I'm sitting with Mark. I've got my feet up and I'm resting easily. Feed it on and pull it up. Go back and make my locking stitch. Then I only need 2 more stitches. I'm back at my mark. Pull it up. Make 1 locking stitch and run the needle through the loop that's created when you're pulling your thread up through. Run the needle through the loop, pull it tight, then I lay it down. I make a loop with my hand, run the needle through the loop, hold the knot so it finds its way down to the bottom of the fabric. There it is. Then I can cut my thread, and before you finish, go ahead and make a knot on that thread so that the moment you pick up your next one and you're ready to sew, your needle and thread are ready. So there we go. Now, then I take this, smooth it out, and with my hand, since I'm doing this by hand, I just run my fingernail along and push the seam allowance to the dark, because this is a very dark blue. Then I put it on. I love these wool boards. You notice I'm pressing it. I'm not ironing it. I do not want to distort this shape now that I've made it. Then I come here, I cut the seam allowance at an angle to the middle, and that removes the bunny ears. So now I'm up to 34, and I need 42, so only 8 more to go. I'm going to make sure I get these ready in the next couple of days, because the next clue is coming out Saturday, May 4th. That's coming up. So I'll be ready. I went ahead recently and bought my first wool pressing mat. And I bought a small one because I wanted to see what it was like before I spent money. They're not cheap. And I love it. It ends up creating an extremely flat. Once it's pressed, it's very nice and flat. So I'm very pleased. And as I told you too, I figured that when I make these, then I can take the full template and make sure that my piecing is accurate. Because I cut mine out with 2 separate templates. But this way, I get to double check. Which is always a good thing to do, because then that way, if everything's accurate, then it comes back together accurately. All right, so I'm almost done with month number 1. I can't wait for month number 2.